Thank you so much. Now, in truth, I'm just a warm-up act for another Tom or Thomas from North London who has preposterously curly hair as well. But I'm going to do my best to lay the groundwork for him. And Ravi approached me a year ago to see if I would speak here. And I played hard to get for approximately 2 seconds. And the reason it didn't take long is I fell in love with this continent in 1995. I worked as a teacher in Tanzania, and I, to this date, think it's the thing that's impacted me more than anything else. So that's the good news. The next bit of good news is right through the course of this talk, we'll be live tweeting links to the stories that I reference in case you guys want to dive into them more deeply. I hope that's also good news. Now, the bad news is Ravi said to me, you've got 40 minutes to speak. It's a long time, no? I mean, it's statistically proven that you guys are going to go onto screensaver mode after 18 minutes. So my strategy, like presented with that, is do 2 18-minute talks. I could go and get changed in the middle, but I didn't actually pack for that. So I am going to give you 2 different thoughts today. And the first one won't specifically be about my work, but it'll be something that I'm inspired by at the moment, and that is technology as a design tool. Technology is a tool to have greater impact. And the second one is a sphere that I really work in and I'm passionate about. So I'll share some more personal stories with you. And that's open design. So let's start off with the idea that technology is a tool. And I'd love to share with you 2 stories. And I think these stories are very different. They're from different continents, but they're unbelievably similar. So the first story is a story from an organization called One Laptop Per Child. In 2012, they ran a project. Now, normally, One Laptop Per Child have a belief that you should actually, train people to teach with technology. You should train kids to use the technology, to be educated. But they ran an experiment. They ran an experiment in 2 Ethiopian villages where they literally just dropped in 20 tablets, Motorola Zooms, in each village. They handed them over. There were places with little or no education infrastructure. There was very little formal education there. People couldn't speak English. They weren't aware of electronic devices as we enjoy them. And they just dropped these tablets in there. It was all packaged. And something pretty remarkable happened. Like we'd expect, certainly when I give my kids presents at Christmas, they ignore the devices and play with the box. So you'd sort of expect some behavior like that. But that didn't happen. It absolutely didn't. Within 4 minutes, some kid had opened the box and found an on-off switch. They'd never seen an on-off switch before. It was amazing. And by the way, there were Motorola Zooms, so I'd probably struggle to find an on-off switch. But that's a different story, sorry. And I apologize to whoever took the job at Motorola, but you're working on that. It's going to be cool. So after 5 days, these kids in these villages were using, on average, 47 apps per kid per day. That's pretty amazing. After 2 weeks, the kids were walking around the villages singing ABC songs in English. But most remarkably, after 5 months, an amazing kid called Kelbisa Negusa had hacked Android. He'd hacked the operating system to enable the camera that the guys at MIT had actually disabled because they were worried about memory. This 8-year-old hacked Android, and he proclaimed himself to be a lion, which is a big deal. In Ethiopia, it's a sign of his strength. It's absolutely inspirational to me. I still kind of come out in goosebumps when I hear that story. So that's my first one for you guys. Hackers were born they taught themselves. So let's come back to what we can learn about that story. The second story is one that heralds from closer to me, closer to my home. So an entrepreneur in Wales got frustrated because in shopping centres in the UK, a bunch of teenagers were loitering. And so he designed a device, a speaker, that would play a 17 megahertz mosquito-type noise. It was called the mosquito, this technology, to the kids to scare them off. The great thing about a 17 megahertz frequency is guys my age, or in fact guys over about 20 or girls over 20, cannot hear it. It sounds wrong, no? So I kind of agree. I had that reaction as well. Now, the really scary thing for you guys is it's just played now. I just played it. And actually, I'm going to play it again twice. So for those of you that are sat there thinking, oh, I could have heard it probably, I'll play it another 2 times to see if you pick up on it. So shout if someone hears it. But that's not the amazing bit of the story. I think that's kind of offensive. I'm not excited about that as a design. What I'm excited about is the fact that some kids went to the shopping center and they recorded the noise on their cell phones. They recorded the noise on their cell phones. Why would they do that? The heck's the reason for that? The answer is they wanted a ringtone for in the classroom that their teacher would not hear. These kids had taken something in true Tai Chi fashion. They turned something that was targeted to make them feel upset and actually used it as an opportunity. And by the way, it just played again. These kids became designers. In fact, one entrepreneurial kid, I love this, actually started selling the ringtone. And then some other kids started doing like Eminem versions and stuff, which is just amazing. So those are my 2 stories to kick off. And the reason I find them inspiring is, firstly, they're a reminder that absolutely everybody has the capacity to design. Anyone that suggests it's the privilege of just a few people that have studied at school X or Y is absolutely wrong. Secondly, we all achieve more through collaboration. Not even Kalisa would have actually achieved what he achieved in a solitary way. We push each other on. We combine ideas. We work together to create more. And the final one, which is what I'd love to spend a bit of time talking about because I think it's important, is the idea that actually technology is just a design tool. Let's not be scared of technology. Let's stop saying offline versus online. Let's stop structuring businesses with a separate digital team. To all of us, technology, online and offline, is just life. Let's incorporate that and really understand it. So let's focus on technology being a tool. How many times have you heard people, often my grandma, to be fair, talk about technology destroying the world? It's ridiculous. It's just another tool. You hear people saying technology makes us antisocial. I guarantee that for the last 500 years, people have been saying the same thing. When this photo was taken, I bet you they were saying the newspaper makes us antisocial. It was a technology. Our job is to harness the technology and design with it, and to design new tools, often with technology. So let's dive into that a little. We often, I think, with technology, think it's actually addressing completely new human needs. It's just not true. Do you think the alarm clock, what do you think the precursor to the alarm clock was? Someone shouting, maybe, a family member. Actually, post-industrial revolution, or starting in the industrial revolution, it was one of these. This was a tool that acted like an alarm clock. What might that do? So people called knocker-uppers, which I imagine if you look up on Google is a catastrophe. Like the SEO on that must be horrible. But knocker-uppers in East London used to use this tool from the Industrial Revolution through to the 1930s to do this, to knock on factory workers to wake them up. That was just a tool. An entrepreneurial lady saw that and said, I don't want to carry around that stick. So she designed this. It's a pea shooter. She would just fire peas against the window to wake them up. It's just tools evolving. It evolved then into the alarm clock. It's just a lovely arc of journey meeting the same human needs. So when we design with technology, we have to address a real human need. But people too often forget that actually you're as good or as bad as your competition. Your own needs, everyone is creative. They're meeting their needs in some way already. So how are you going to meet their needs better? So the Revere camera thought they were meeting a need better. They delivered you this weird viewing sort of instrument and promised 3D spectacular images. You had to carry the camera as well. It was clearly a complete nightmare. The friction was too great in meeting the human need. We have to design to deliver services in lower friction ways. That's our job as designers. So often I hear people talk about Facebook and why it's not successful with teenagers. Like, one answer is clearly that teenagers don't want to be on the same platform as their mum and their grandma. That's one answer. But I think there's another answer, which actually communicating inside the classroom is a lower friction way of doing many of the things that Facebook promises. So they stick to WhatsApp and WeChat and Snapchat to actually meet the needs better, more efficiently, faster than Facebook. Now, sometimes you have objects that you think would really get adopted quickly. So this is an example. Like, human beings invented the wheel and invented sacks thousands of years ago. Like, you would expect, whenever we started using suitcases, etc., it would have got adopted, it would have been accepted, but it wasn't. It's actually 40 years ago this month that a gentleman called Bernard Sadow invented or patented the rolling suitcase idea. And he'd just got back from a holiday in Aruba with his family, and he was upset. He was carrying a lot of bags, and he saw someone using heavy loading equipment to load stuff on with wheels on the bottom. So he designed one. He made one. He designed it. He filed the patent, but it didn't actually get anywhere. It took 20 years for it to be adopted. And when you talk to people, you talk to him about why that was true, the answer is, men want to look macho. Men wanted to look macho and wouldn't adopt it. It wasn't actually until a Northwest Airlines pilot started making a similar one and selling it to cabin crew so that when they're very swanky walking through the airport, suddenly that became aspirational. So we have to design products that meet needs, but in a lower friction, like real friction, but also lower cultural friction way. All these things have in common meeting needs better. And this, as designers, is becoming increasingly important, because the consistent thing that you guys have heard today is making stuff is getting easier. Since I started this talk, statistically, there have been 2 apps uploaded into the Apple iOS store. 2 since I started this talk. There's roughly 300 uploaded per day. There's 1 million apps in the App Store. There's over 6 billion downloads. It's a proliferation of stuff. It's going to be more important to meet human needs better. We need to design for that. And it's no different to what happened with the hand tools. They evolved. They specialized. We had to do a better job with them. We had to design better versions of them. So we have to stay focused on human needs. And one of the places I often come back to remember that is the most famous triangular framework in human history, Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow was right. This stuff hasn't changed. Technology is changing unbelievably rapidly, but this stuff has not changed. Many of us, if we're sat in here, we probably have our physiological and safety needs taken care of, so we can worry about the other stuff. We can design to meet these needs. So historically, when someone had to shout help as an alarm clock or alternatively for security, we now depend on mobile phones. One of the reasons they're adopted with kids, paranoid parents like me. Another would be how we find love. Historically, we would have just looked in our village, and probably, there'd be 20 potential partners, 10 of which we were related to, which is not cool. Now we can depend on services like Facebook. Historically, we would have to go to places like Harvard to build our self-esteem, to build our education, our earning potential. Now technology has taken the friction out of learning, and we can go to MOOCs like Coursera. Historically, if I wanted to self-actualize or be the best that I can be, I would have to get a canvas and some oil paintings and invest real time. Instagram's filters take the friction out of creating. They're meeting a real human need. That's why the adoption has been exactly as it is. So my reminder, the first half of my talk, my first talk, is a reminder that our job as designers, great designers, they meet real human needs. You've heard that consistently throughout today. They meet those needs with lower friction. And that's lower friction in terms of pain or effort. It's lower friction in terms of culture. It's lower friction in terms of investment. And finally, they make it delightful. We overinvest occasionally to surprise. Often that's the emotional part of the brand that you've heard so much about today. And so I often spend, when I'm, stop and think for a minute, I try and set a certain amount of time in my diary each week to ask why the hell I'm doing what I'm doing. Like, what is the human need it really addresses? What's my guiding light for why I'm actually embarking on this project? And if I cannot start a project by describing a benefit that it will create for someone, don't start. Don't write lines of code unless you can articulate your hypothesis and why the hell you're starting. Almost reverse the traditional approach. And then you can get building and you can see whether you've made progress. So the next thought I wanted to share with you guys, I guess the next part of the presentation, is that was stuff that I've observed in the world. This is the stuff that I really care about personally and where I spend 90% of my working life at the moment. And it's authentic to that first part of the story. I wondered what I could do that's actually vaguely meaningful in that rapidly changing world. And I observed the stuff we saw. Firstly, that we're all designers. Secondly, that collaboration achieves more. And so in that context, I looked out at the world and said, how are people working together? How are they collaborating? How are they coming up with new solutions? And the bulk of it seems to be in places like Town Hall. Is that high friction or low friction? It's unbelievably high friction. It's expensive. It's painful to get people together. Town halls are high friction. The next thing people did is they just took idea suggestion boxes and put them online. That's low friction, but it's also low collaboration. It doesn't achieve those objectives. At the best case scenario, you get millions of ideas flying into the idea suggestion box. Rare, by the way. More common, in fact, we recently had an IDEO partner meeting and there was an idea suggestion box hidden in the room. And at the end of it, all we found in there was a lifesaver mint. I kind of worry that it's some sort of metaphor for the business or something. It was like some deep and meaningful observation, but it wasn't. They were just lazy. So idea suggestion boxes don't work. If you dive into an idea suggestion box, you can't see anything. It's totally opaque. You can't learn from what one another are doing. You have absolutely no clue what one another are doing. If you're lucky and many people contribute ideas, then there's usually some poor soul who has to walk along in a high-friction way, walk along, unlock the idea suggestion box, and get overwhelmed with everything. Absolutely blown away with everything in there. I met an amazing lady, actually, who said that she was at a big telco doing open innovation, and she had one competition where they had 10,000 entries, and they had the ability to look at about 200, so they just had to literally start again. We wondered, if you look at this process where, if that person does start to sort through the idea suggestion box, if you look at that process, she'd realize that they were all the same ideas often. She'd realize the friction involved. Often whole teams would have to do this. So about 3.5 years ago, or more actually, 5 years ago, I started wondering, how do you take the friction out of this? How do you actually improve the collaboration? How do you do a new type of idea suggestion box? And what would the benefits be if we took the friction out and enabled collaboration? Well, the first thing to do is just bust that thing open. Do it all transparently. And then similar ideas could collect together. Then people with different skill sets could work together to come up with solutions. And this was the basic observation that led to Open IDEO. So I'd love to play you a short video to describe Open IDEO, and I'll give you a little history of the journey we've been on. I give us very I give us a lowish score for what we've done to date. It's very much emergent. I think you'll see that through the course of this, but hopefully you'll be able to view it through that lens of human needs, technology, and collaboration.
For a while now, IDEO designers have been keen to put the best bits of the creative process online and invite everyone to join in. Open IDEO is a global community that will draw on your optimism, inspiration, ideas, and opinions to solve problems together for the collective social good. Each challenge starts with a big question, something to get all of us thinking. Next comes the research or inspiration phase, in which we all post inspiring things that we've seen out there that may help us solve the big question. The more visual the posts, the better. Images, videos, and stories will all help to get everyone going. After inspiring one another, it's time to flex our creative muscles in the ideas phase. How would you solve this problem? Post your solution and show everyone how you plan to make it a reality. If someone else's idea sparks something for you, you can build on it. OpenIDEO was designed with this way of working in mind. This is where you get to collaborate with other people and where the magic really happens. Sometimes we'll add a refinement phase. Here we encourage you to prototype, experiment, or even build ideas in your community with real users as a way to keep learning and refining. Don't forget to ask the community for help or to join your team. Once ideas are fully formed, they're put through the evaluation phase. This process is exactly as it sounds. You rate and comment on the ideas that you believe will best solve the problem according to the given criteria. Our sponsors and your opinions help us select winning ideas, and that's where things get really exciting. They, you, or anyone else is free to take any ideas from OpenIDEO forward. This is the essence of open innovation and social impact. In fact, we've been humbled by some of the OpenIDEO community and sponsor impact to date, ranging from helping build a bone marrow database of over 100,000 people, developing an app for Amnesty International, and the launch of several social enterprises and projects. Your participation in each phase, plus how much you've collaborated with others, all add up to your design quotient, or DQ for short. You can choose to keep it public or private. It offers you feedback and recognition, and because we're all good at different parts of the creative process, we'll all have different DQs. Just like in all good brainstorming sessions, we're going for quantity as well as quality. The more you add, collaborate and critique in any phase, the bigger DQ you'll rack up. The DQ will become a badge of honour for community members over time. In a nutshell, we've created an open online tool that takes you through the creative process. It's highly visual, collaborative, generates feedback, and most importantly, it's fun to use. OpenIDEO offers its community inspiration and recognition. The site will be as good as its input, and we're looking forward to seeing the impact we can all create. OpenIDEO, an open platform for innovation where we create better together.
So to show you guys we practice what we preach, I wanted to show you a couple of tools of how we got to this platform, because I think it's important. It's something I'd really recommend. So we have regular meetings to set a drumbeat of why we're doing what we're doing. But one of the things we did is we used this framework at the start of the project. This is a framework by a guy called Karim Lakhani at Harvard Business School, and he listed out all the reasons people might be motivated to participate in a project. And by the way, this applies mainly to digital, but it should apply to anything when you're building a sense of community or building community. And we made a decision. We decided to try and design for every one of these motivations except money. We thought money is going to compromise collaboration, but maybe we can design ways for people to participate in all of this stuff. If any of you want this framework, we literally put it up on design teams' walls still to challenge ourselves around vision and why we're doing what we're doing. I still use it to this day. It's been incredibly powerful for me. But to flick it back to a framework which we've already looked at, if you look at these needs, we've tried to design for all of them. So, we set tough challenges that we hope will benefit the world. For example, one that's up there at the moment, which I'll come back to, is how might we improve women and girls' safety in slums. We've tried to build in community, so teams coalesce on ideas like you saw in that animation. It's very important. We've tried to build in the design quotient you saw, which is actually a way to get feedback about your performance on your site. We see people applying for jobs at IDEO and other companies with their design quotient all the time. We see people actually celebrating impact. It's a type of self-actualization, but also developing new skills. So when designing your service, thinking through the motivations and designing for each, and making sure these interactions pull in the same direction, I think is really powerful. And to date, it's helped us grow a community of 60,000 people from over 160 countries. In fact, we looked at the visits last week, and actually I'm hoping there may be someone here, more likely streaming from these 3 places. The 3 places we'd never had a visit from were a remote island called Svalbard, North Korea, and the Western Sahara. So if we can get any representation from those countries, I'd be absolutely absolutely overwhelmed. It'd be wonderful. So the reason I think we've been successful in building this community is the impact we talked about. It's impact around individuals taking action. So for example, 100,000 people swabbing their cheek to be on a bone marrow registry in order to give someone a match. In this case, someone actually received a match they may not have otherwise had. Or alternatively, large institutions co-designing with this community tools they may not have had otherwise, like an app for Amnesty International to reduce the chance anyone is kidnapped when they're working in dangerous areas. Or finally, and perhaps most excitingly to me, community enterprises, social enterprises that spring up on the platform because diverse people that would never have met before have met in order to work together. And this stuff just happens on what is basically a blank canvas. We give it a little structure, but it's essentially a blank canvas. I think the challenge we're currently running, the one you can see here, is one of the toughest we've ever run to date, asking how we can improve women's security in slums in India, a topic that's unbelievably difficult. It's the first of 10 challenges that we're running with DFID, or UK Aid, and our own non-profit organization. So we will iterate and improve. We're consistent about sort of piloting early, improve, learn. So we're running 10 challenges over 5 years. But I thought it'd be fun to show you some relevant stuff from here for this challenge. Now, it's a good overview of the challenge, actually, is just to understand that we fundamentally believe that instead of us designing, instead of just smart people in a project room, Michael described this beautifully, instead of just us designing, can we actually shine a light on examples that are happening on the ground right now? Can we learn from that diversity? So this is the video we produced to launch the challenge last week.
According to the statistics, 1 out of 3 women in their lifetime will either be raped, beaten, or have some sort of violence against them. That's huge. That's 1 billion women.
When women arrive in urban areas, they have an incredible story of how they were raised in maybe rural areas and how they've traveled to cities. When you get to a city, you become isolated, your story just evaporates and you are no one, you're very isolated.
There is a safety issue. You've got dark corners and a lot of spaces for people to retreat to.
How can you make people feel safe in an environment like that, right?
Especially in urban settings, the physical environment, because everybody's living in close proximity, there's this dense population. So how do we use that negativity into a positive statement, and how we can make this physical proximity work with us rather than against us?
You've got a critical mass of people and that you can make things happen quite quickly. So, if you only get 10% of people in a dense urban population aligned with your cause, that could be 1 million people.
we shouldn't make the mistake of making violence against women and girls only a women and girls problem, because then we make women and girls responsible for solving it, when it should be something that is universal, that is the responsibility of the whole community.
To talk about a safe environment, it's an environment where I particularly don't have to think about safety in the first place.
After having safety, you start thinking of now how to have a better job, how to get the better position, how to be the women leader in parliament, how to be the president. But the important part that is important is safety. After safety, other things become secondary.
We launched the challenge last week, and we're currently in a research phase. So we don't jump straight to ideas. Instead, at the beginning of the challenge you can see top left, we have a research phase where we understand what's happening out in the world. What are the real things happening? And I was lucky enough, actually, to be able to contribute to this challenge from here. But in the meantime, over 300 people have contributed. We had people sort of interviewing others from Iraq, Nepal, Kenya. You build this dialogue on the platform. You build this dialogue with people that would never have previously met. They would never have combined ideas in the past. And you can see the commenting that results. But me being here for this fantastic event, I thought, can we make the most of that and actually shine a light on some of the great local examples here? And the Design Indaba team were really generous and set up a conversation for me with one of the most wonderful women I've ever met, called Ntutu Mtwana. She's in Khayelitsha Township, which many of you would know, and she works with an organization called VPUU. So we shot a small video inviting her to help understand, help teach people in India and Nepal about what she's done. And I'll let her words, I think, speak for themselves.
And there is no better place you can live in than a place that you care for. So for me, the advice would be that there is nothing impossible. You can turn, an informal settlement into a very, very safe place. And in informal settlements, just the basics are what the people are requiring. Once you create social cohesion in informal settlements and you work with all the structures, you can get that commitment that together we can make it.
So we had the chance to share this video on the platform, and yesterday, you can see a little lower down here, it was shown to a women's group in Kathmandu. And the people in Kathmandu said they were shocked that this stuff happened to other women. They were never aware that it wasn't an entirely local problem. And an amazing lady that shares her experience practically of how she can tackle this stuff makes way more difference than I can coming up with solutions myself. Necessity is the mother of invention. These people are solving stuff better than I could ever. So creating a platform that takes the friction out of them collaborating, to me, is the ultimate leverage. It's how I want to spend my time. And I start discovering, the more you look at it, the more you discover other examples. So there's actually a Design Indaba-backed project, which is mind-blowingly wonderful, called Another Light Up. You guys may have seen it. So Another Light Up is a project between Design Indaba, VPUU, who you've just seen, and a local graffiti artist called Faith 47. And she's done a print locally, which will actually help light up a path in the township that VPUU work in. I would never have discovered this stuff, was it not for going out and speaking to her. And interestingly, this stuff is right now on the platform inspiring people in India, people in another 159 countries. It's inspiring them all to design together. We'll play a bit of this video as well because, again, it's inspiring. So for those of you that couldn't read the small text, apologies, but the basic essence of the idea is instead of just focusing locally on fixing that path and shedding light on it, how can we actually have everyone take notice of that challenge? And so just close to the CBD, she's created a mural, and every time we tweet about it, or more importantly, we donate money to actually this cause and perhaps receive a print signed by her, then they will turn on a light in the township, but they will also turn on a light on the mural. So it'll be a visual thing for you guys as you go home tonight. So I'd love to close out at that point, actually, by saying, please get involved. You can see we're just at the beginning of this process. In fact, there's 3 ways I would absolutely be delighted if you could support us with. The first is, during this, we've been live tweeting these examples, but we've also been live tweeting about the platform. So please feel free to share it. The more diverse people that go on that platform and collaborate, the better the outcomes will be. Secondly, we've also tweeted about Another Light Up, that amazing Indaba project I just mentioned. Please share that. And finally, please do contribute to Open IDEO. We run meetups because offline is important globally. We give people that perhaps don't have connectivity the opportunity to share their opinions on the platform. We've never had one in Africa, so I'm excited to potentially see that happen. And if any of you would like support in doing that, we have toolkits that we provide, etc. But we would really genuinely love you guys to be involved. So thank you very much for listening.